I think the best way to describe David Szymanski's 2022 short horror game Iron Lung is broodingly oppressive, and its tone is entrenched immediately from the title screen. The score, also composed by Szymanski, conveys a mysterious and alluring quality before we dive deep into its bleak, brutal ocean of blood for which there is no return, while the camera is cleverly composed just above the waveline to create the sensation of struggling against the thick, abnormal waves, indifferent to our efforts to stay above it. The game makes it clear just in this single, morbidly calm frame that this isn't for those unnerved by suffocating claustrophobia or thalassophobia, and even though nothing strictly distressing is apparent, it's the unknowingness of what lies beneath, mixed with the classic alien line, "In space, no one can hear you scream," that evokes a terrifying feeling of loneliness and insignificance. Iron Lung tells the story of an unnamed convict who's offered their freedom in exchange for navigating a makeshift malfunctioning submarine, fittingly nicknamed the Iron Lung based on the overbearing ventilation respirator, through an unknown barren moon consisting of a vast ocean of blood. The goal seems to be that you'll successfully document evidence of natural resources in a universe where decades prior every known star and habitable planet vanished without a trace in what was ominously called the Quiet Rapture. The only remnants of humanity left are those on space stations and starships who have seemingly fought for control, with your command coming from the presumed authoritarian consolidation of iron. I won't be getting into every facet of world-building lore, but if you sleuth the sub's terminal, you'll be able to build a grander, arguably nihilistic picture of the circumstances that surround our convicted protagonist. What happened to this universe will forever remain a mystery. Some argue it's a literal religious rapture, others suggest it's a quantum anomaly, and of course, there are those who submit to it as pure cosmic terror. However, for you, it doesn't matter. What matters is completing the job and getting your freedom. A freedom which, let's be honest, was never on the cards when the Iron Lung's engineers already acknowledged that the ship isn't built to withstand the depths you're being dropped into. Szymanski confidently knows how to provoke your sensibilities by playing on primal human fears, whilst immersing us in an enigmatic world where not giving us the answers leaves us longing to uncover more. Now, before we dive deeper, it's probably worth acknowledging I was only ever vaguely aware of the game until the OceanGate Titan disaster in 2023, where 5 people, including the company founder, perished when OceanGate's faulty engineered submarine imploded from the pressure. The reason the game became associated with the story was because of the loose similarities in both submarines, particularly how the occupants had to be sealed in from the outside, thus they couldn't open it themselves even if they resurfaced. It's just an utterly harrowing example of negligence and disregard for human life when you don't go through every practical route to ensure its success, which is a point the game indirectly leans on when it quickly becomes clear that the Iron Lung was cold-heartedly designed as a one-way trip. Anyway, before we dive deeper into despair, let's seize the last hope for humanity in the post-apocalyptic world of Once Human. I never expected the world to become polluted with mutated abominations and eldritch Lovecraftian nightmares like the towering siren, the long-tongued agent, the bloated machine-headed scorcher, the ominous rainfall reaper, and a slender walking bus known as the Wanderer, until I fell into Once Human. Once Human is a free-to-play looter-shooter survival action horror set in a post-apocalyptic open world plagued with cosmic SCP-style monsters as a result of a mysterious alien substance known as Stardust, and now it's coming to mobile and is not pay to win. I've sunk a good number of hours into the PC version, and it scratches that surreal nightmare horror sci-fi fantasy itch of grotesqueness and curiosity, where you'll come across a diverse range of unspeakable creatures that keep the experience fresh and engaging with unpredictable surprises and many WTF moments. You can play either solo or with friends, choose between PvE and PvP servers, and get sucked into a gratifying gameplay loop of battling bosses, looting treasure, collecting blueprints, crafting weapons and armor, building up your base, and exploring a mysterious world where I always look forward to seeing what strange and exotic monsters I would come across next. The mobile version will replicate the original PC experience and allow you to play cross-platform smoothly, so click my link below to play once human and get 1000 plus free premium rewards to fast-track your progress by 2 months and jump straight into the action. Admittedly, I find Iron Lung to be kind of frustrating to play, but I think it's by intention given the state of disrepair the submarine is in. The neglect and lack of care or forethought for the submarine's condition is emblematic of how your character is treated. We don't know why they're a convict, but nevertheless, what's left of humanity treats them with inferiority, a burden on society, an expendable grunt nobody will miss. Hell, the terminal even describes this supposed rehabilitation program as effectively mob justice, because they know full well you'll likely never return, even if not technically an impossibility given the usage of the data you supposedly collect. Deep within the fine print, it's possible to interpret the thin possibility that the consolidation of iron have a use for you after it's explained that one of their submarines that was built to actually withstand the conditions was destroyed by something of unknown origin on the very same planet you're navigating. The subconscious detail that truly compounds the horror as you're sealed inside the iron lung without any means of escape or seeing outside bar a photographic monitor is the sense of dire inevitability. You can find a note left by the previous occupant that reinforces the fatalism of your insulation and puts your predicament into a bleak existential context. This is not an expedition, it is an execution. Even if you do get your freedom, it's a life of hardship keeping humanity afloat in a dying universe. As the writer declares, what you have in this sub is a monkey's paw type of freedom. You're technically granted full autonomy within the iron lung, as limited as it may be. You are technically given a purpose, whatever fleeting sense of hope it will give you. Yes, you're in a rusty mechanical coffin at the bottom of a literal blood ocean, but in a sort of paradoxical way, what other choice do you truly have? In the utterly bleakest sense, the last 2 lines of the note truly spell it out. They will get their execution, I will get my freedom. In other words, the sweet release of death seems much more appealing than the empty void and the lies we tell ourselves that hope is still out there. Now, the gameplay itself consists of using a vintage map to navigate the iron lung through an oceanic labyrinth to photograph 10 individual coordinates assumed to be evidence of life, flora, or natural resources. Since you can't see outside due to reinforcement over the sole window to maintain whatever integrity the sub has, you'll have to depend on a small radar to determine how close you are to crashing into cavern walls. Although, to be honest, in my first playthrough, I thought it signified a point of interest and crashed immediately upon going near it. You'd think I'd be smarter than this, but please don't say anything. However, what made understanding the axis and coordinates worse for me on a personal level was the genuine childhood dislike I have for orienteering at summer camp. And given that I'm already dogshit with numbers, my brain was fried keeping track of coordinates and precisely lining up numbers to take the one grainy fucking photograph needed to move on. The emotions I went through certainly did make me feel good, but they did fit the context of what's going on in the world. The camera is the only means of seeing what's outside, and while you can tackle coordinates in any order, at least as far as I know, for ease of stress and efficiency's sake, you'll most likely gravitate in the order of closest to furthest away. It also feels like the most naturally logical route to take, given that each new coordinate heightens the mystery of the planet and leaves you asking more questions about just what the hell is going on. The first few points basically reveal bones of long dead ancient creatures and what I think resemble tentacles, thus confirming life evidently exists on this planet, some of which is obviously far from dead. Oh well, that can fuck off. to subside the repetition of your objective, the game likes to constantly hammer in the worsening conditions of the sub to accelerate a terrifying sense of urgency. Oxygen levels increasingly diminish the further you progress, pressure will cause the piping to crack, expand and contract, valves will randomly burst, a fire can break out, and it was only near the end of my execution, did I notice the rising tide of blood seeping into the sub. But of course, the palpable stress is only amplified by the lingering ambience outside the sub, in particular the distant growls of a big-ass angry ravenous fish that relentlessly stalks you. I should not have flushed that dead goldfish down the toilet years ago. Naturally, the game is best experienced with headphones to intensify how vulnerable you are from all directions, especially when one neat attention to detail is the radar signaling something passing close by your ship. I've played a lot of Subnautica, it's one of my favourite games, so there is a hint of familiarity to it by way of a small, feeble sub with limited mobility being harassed by a leviathan that materializes seemingly out of nowhere. But the difference here is there's no beauty, wonder, or majesty to this world, only pure, unadulterated darkness and fear. Further along, you'll begin to find evidence of a facility which, suggested by the terminal, implies the COI were already aware of what inhabits this planet given its previous expedition, thus confirming the claim that your fate really is nothing more than an exiled execution. At roughly the halfway point, the fish's presence is well and truly keeping you on edge, even knocking you off coordinates on 2 occasions, but notably you'll end up following a structured tunnel that insinuates a containment system between the trenches as though the fish was being studied. The game was testing my patience before pushing me into paranoia as I kept photographing my surroundings and questioning if what I was looking at was the fish or merely the graininess of the camera's poor quality. I mean, look at this. I took this photo twice and I'm definitely convinced the fish was faintly in the distance. The thing is, these photos are not pre-rendered. You genuinely can move around the world freely and photograph what you want at any angle, or at least it gives the illusion of a simulated environment with cleverly implemented scripted moments. Interestingly, the crescendo that struck me the most wasn't actually anything to do with the fish, but rather venturing into perhaps the most narrow corner of the map, which revealed a static-sounding blinding light that distorts your perception, described simply and obscurely as an anomaly. However, before I could observe this cosmic force of energy, I was soon confronted up close and personal with the fish, whose eye consumes the entire lens, leaving me to shit myself. With the blood rising in both the sub and my body pressure, the oxygen low and accepting my inevitable fate, praying for a quick death in fact, the least I could do was finish my illusion of purpose, provide some essence of closure to this bizarre hour-long journey. Yet, as I reach my final coordinate and go to snap the final photo, the fish suddenly breaches the ship, confirming the only fact we already knew: there was never any freedom. In the end, satellite images show the iron lungs scattered over the ocean, having met the same fate as the submarine sent on the actual expedition. The way the ending card is worded mirrors the title screen's indifference to the protagonist. It ruminates on the dying universe and the glimmer of hope humanity is trying to hold on to, but your existence is forgotten, a casualty of no importance. That purpose to document the planet truly meant nothing in the end. As the previous occupant's letter suggested, freedom is an illusion, and it's that grim sentiment that shadows over the fears that the game's world instills in you. Fears of the dark, fears of the deep, fears of being trapped, confined, imprisoned. It's all compounded by the unbearable weight of being alone and forgotten. Your objective is a placebo anesthetic to numb and distract you from death, to further instill that false illusion of hope that humanity continues to lie to itself about, as like the stars and planets before, it slowly vanishes into the void. In Iron Lung, you are entombed in your watery grave from the start, banished to a purgatory to await the inevitable. And at the back of your mind, you know this to be true, but you haven't accepted it yet. Because when everything crumbles all around you, that spark of humanity still exists within. What harm can it bring to try and give comfort when all hope is truly lost?